Blog Talk Radio.
Hello everyone, this is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio, and I'm so glad that you can be here. This is January 13th, 6 p.m. Calgary, Alberta time, and I'm just really excited to be here tonight. We have a very special guest who's going to be on the show here tonight, Michelle Rosenthal, and she is the founder of Heal My PTSD, LLC, and she's got so much information, and she has so much knowledge on the issue of post-traumatic stress disorder, and I'm just so happy that she's going to be on the show. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, so I sure hope you can tune in to this, and just if you want to call in, I do have a guest call-in number, and that is area code 917-889-3736, and you're more than welcome to phone in. And I also have a chat window up and in the chat room there, and there's a little bit of information typed up in there, and you can feel you're just more than welcome to sit in the chat room and feel comfortable just to hang out in there. And if you have questions, please make sure that you write private if you want it to stay private, first of all, and also just give us a chance to answer them, because this is just a half-an-hour show, and we might hopefully we can get to all your questions, and if not, if we don't get to them on the air, we can try to I'll get to them afterwards, because I'll still be on the switchboard and in the chat room. So I'm so happy to welcome Michelle Rosenthal, and I do have a bit of a little bio on Michelle. Before we answer the phone here, I think she's on the other line, and I'll just tell you a little bit about Michelle. Michelle Rosenthal, she's the founder of Heal My PTSD, LLC, and she is a post-traumatic stress disorder advocacy. It's a post-traumatic stress disorder advocacy organization, and Michelle is also a trauma survivor who struggled with undiagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder for 25 years, and then she was diagnosed and went on a healing rampage. Today, she is 100% PTSD free. That's just awesome. On her healing journey, Michelle found self-empowerment played a key role in the recovery process. In order to reclaim the power trauma stole from her, Michelle deliberately constructed a post-trauma identity. This method is now the foundation for the free Bridge the Gap healing workshop found on the Heal My PTSD blog. A PTSD healing devotee, Michelle is a dynamic coach who helps survivors recover, reconstruct, and reconnect with their untraumatized selves. As a mental health advocate, public speaker, blogger, writer, workshop seminar leader, certified life coach, certified hypnotist, and certified practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, Michelle uses her personal experience, education, professional training, and research to help others further their trauma and PTSD recovery. Michelle works with several long-distance clients and also practices on the staff of Summit Wellness Centers in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. So this lady is one lady that we want to talk to, and I'm going to go ahead and have her come on the air right now.
And hello to all of your listeners. Thank you for having me tonight.
Yeah, this is just awesome. I'm just so excited that you're here with us. And
I've been looking forward to it all day.
Me too. I have been too, and I'm just really excited and just happy to be able to talk with you and let you just share with us some of your knowledge and the wealth of knowledge that you have on this very serious issue that a lot of people suffer from, right? So yeah, this is great. I'm so glad that you're here, and we had we thought we might talk on a few different issues: living with, coping, and healing post-traumatic stress disorder from a survivor's perspective, and also from a professional perspective tonight. So we got lots of great information, I'm sure. So yeah, this is just really great. So you have your own website.
I do, Lori. I founded Heal My PTSD, which can be found at www.healmyptsd.com. I founded it on the pretense that I was on a mission to help other people suffer less. I felt that I had lost so much of my life to undiagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder, and when I was finally diagnosed and was looking for information, I found a lot of PTSD websites, but they were all so clinical and writing so far over my head. And if you know anyone who has PTSD, you know that we have a really tough time concentrating and that it's hard to focus And I found these other websites so difficult to read. It was hard enough for me to focus without there being words that I had to look up and concepts and long articles that I just couldn't keep up with. And that was a real hindrance to me in educating myself about PTSD because I couldn't find the information I needed in a way that I could absorb it. Mm-hmm. And so when I founded Heal My PTSD, one of the things that I wanted to do was to create a website by a survivor for survivors. Mm-hmm. And I thought I was going to be alone in that mission. And what's ended up happening is that survivors from around the world have helped me create this incredible resource. So I've laid out the website in 4 areas for awareness, education, treatment, and self-empowered healing. And yet on our resource pages, survivors everywhere have sent me links that they found helpful, books that they found helpful. So it's really become a resource that's for all of us, mm-hmm. that's built to help us rather than just give us, something to read that we really can't utilize.
Right, so, that's right. Yeah, something that you can put into practical that you can understand and actually, put into your practical daily life, Yeah,
exactly.
Not just like some big, medical document that just doesn't quite tell you how to cope with this, right? And how to deal with it and where to go for help. Yeah. So this is great. I know. I love your website, and I've been on there and looked around, and I've been checking it out, and it is so good. And I would recommend it for anyone. And I have been really trying to just get the word out because it's so important. Like 25 years of your life. When I read that, I just thought that's amazing. 25 years of undiagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder, and I thought this can happen to anybody. Who's suffered a traumatic event and just doesn't recognize what it is and is living in this in a world that's just horrible, where they're barely functioning or just the different issues surrounding post-traumatic stress disorder. And so that's why it's just it's so important. I'm so glad that your website is out there for people like me and anyone else who's been through traumatic experiences can go on your website and get some great information. So I really love it, and I think it's great, and I thank you for it.
I'm so glad that you appreciate it, and I have found that when you struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder, so many people don't recognize the signs, and that can be people in our own lives, our friends, our family, our colleagues, and the professionals that are in our lives. I went from one doctor to another over a series of years with both psychological issues and physical medical issues. Nobody put the clues together. Nobody actually recognized what was wrong. For example, typically in people with post-traumatic stress disorder, your cortisol levels are very high. My doctors all noticed that, but it didn't mean anything to them. They literally, in the notes in my charts, discounted it because my body was so enormously distorted in terms of its systematic function by PTSD that when they saw the cortisol levels were high, that was the least of their problems. I had liver dysfunction, stomach dysfunction, my intestines, everything was in various states of disarray. And so the doctors all looked at that and said, well, who cares about her cortisol? Her liver's going berserk. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that for many people, the stress of the mind puts an enormous strain on the body, and you do end up with physical symptoms that no one can diagnose, and yet they don't think about what's the psychological component that's going on here.
Right, that's linked to it, that's right. That's the main, actually the main cause, exactly.
Yeah, exactly, because I'll tell you what was so interesting, Lori, when I did get my diagnosis and I started working to heal my PTSD, my physical problems healed themselves. So I'd gone to doctors for over 10 years trying to figure out what was wrong with my liver and my stomach and everything else, and no one could diagnose or cure me. And when I finally got the right care for my PTSD, my liver's fine now. Nobody can explain it, but you and I understand, what happens.
That's right. Yeah, because the mind is very powerful, and you know, the I've actually seen that lots in my research, just in doing what I'm doing for my show. Looking around, you see there are lots of people that say, you know, when their mind is healed, then their body actually takes on the manifestation of the healing itself, right? It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Well, I'm so glad that you were healed from your PTSD, because this is awesome. What an amazing journey. And I'm just so glad that you have, you know, been successful and you're 100% post-traumatic stress disorder free. That is awesome. That is so good.
I don't have nightmares anymore. I don't have hypervigilance, no arousal. I'm not emotionally numb anymore, which has been a fabulous thing. Frightening in the beginning, but fabulous. Right. And I don't live in a constant state of anxiety, which I was so used to that I didn't realize I was living that way until it was gone. And that was a very interesting transition.
Yeah, I bet.
So,
because that's the thing. A lot of times, if you live with something long enough, but you know, over a period of time, it becomes the norm, right? And then all of a sudden, when you do start, you start healing and you start doing things that you normally wouldn't necessarily do, because you know you're sort of free from that. You do notice the difference, and you're like, wow, how was I even existing like that? You know, I've come on my own. Yeah, I didn't, you know, I don't know if I've ever been diagnosed. I've never been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, but just looking at the signs and the symptoms of it, I think I probably had some, and just from various traumatic experiences in my own life, and just in, you know, doing some sort of self-work on myself, you know, managed to kind of come through it, you know.
How? What did you do?
Well, I did a lot of really inward searching, and really looking inside, really getting to know how I felt about myself, how I felt about life in general, and just really worked on myself. It took a long time, and I really wish I would have gotten some help. That's why I'm doing this show, and I know that's why you do what you do every day, and that's just to tell people to make sure they reach out and you know, get help, right? Because you don't want to suffer with that you don't want to have to suffer from that. No one deserves that, right? So,
I think you're absolutely right. Nobody deserves to suffer. Nobody should suffer. And what I think people don't talk about enough is that it is possible to overcome post-traumatic stress disorder. There are way too many survivors who feel so beaten down by it that they can't imagine that that's true, and I certainly was one of them. I mean, you struggle with PTSD for 25 years. You don't think you're ever going to be normal.
Right.
And yet that's a false and very limiting belief. And there are even practitioners. I work with several. I'm a self-empowered healing coach, and I work with several PTSD clients. That's the specialty. That's all I do. And many of them have therapists and they have psychiatrists, because I'm not a therapist. I really work on a whole different aspect of healing and recovery in terms of helping people deliberately construct their post-trauma identity and the ability to take back their power, because a large part of what's wrong with PTSD is that we feel powerless. We feel powerless in our trauma, and then we feel powerless afterward, forever and ever. And then PTSD only makes that worse because you feel so powerless in the grip of it. And so a large part of healing is learning to take back your power. And in therapy, a lot of the clients that I have, they have therapists and psychiatrists who just keep prescribing meds and giving them more prescriptions, more medication, and telling them, you can't heal this, but we can help you manage it. And that to me is unacceptable, because if you're working with somebody who doesn't think you can heal, how will you?
Exactly. Yeah, if they're telling you you're not going to, you know, we'll just keep giving you what we know how to, what we can do.
If they don't even believe it, how are they going to help you achieve it?
Yeah, that's
right. And the fact of the matter is, in the work that I've been doing online with HealMyPTSD.com, I've met many survivors like yourself who have gone through various traumatic experiences, whether they're clinically diagnosed with PTSD or not, and there are many who are making progress and overcoming it and going on to live great lives. And that's really the message that I wish the media and the community would start to explore. because there are so many people accepting PTSD when they should be rejecting it and getting over it and getting on with it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, don't accept it. Say
no. That's the worst thing.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. I think it was always looked upon as being almost like a disease that you just couldn't you could never get rid of. Yeah. And it's really a disorder, and disorders, you can change. I think with some good help, like you're saying, with some good just working through it, and some a good program like the one that you have, a person can work through it and learn how to self-empowerment, like you're saying, learn how to help themselves.
Right.
So that's awesome. So I just love that, and I love because then it's you're doing it yourself, right? It's instead of just taking pills or whatever you have to do, you're actually empowering yourself to work through it and to have a good life, and to be free of all those terrible symptoms that come along with it. So yeah,
right. And let me just make a note here to clarify for anybody who is taking medications that you and I are absolutely, I can't speak for you, but I am absolutely for medication when it's to help somebody heal. I don't like medication when it's to help them stay stagnant and just cope. So a lot of people, their anxiety can be so enormous that they can't even focus on healing. And in that case, medication can be a really great tool in the recovery process because it allows you to use your energy in healing rather than in this anxious state. So I'm not against medication. I just am not for it when it's used to just let someone zone out and not do any work so that they don't ever get to a place of freedom. Right.
Just as if that was the only option, sort of thing, and this is what you'll do for the rest of your life, sort of thing. Yeah, no, I hear you. That's the whole thing. I agree with you on that. I do agree on that. Some medication is necessary for some people, just to help them get through. And so yeah, I wouldn't say that either. And I agree with you 100%. But yeah, if you can, if it's not needed, then it seems to me, it's better to go to get help in other ways, right? And this is just one more way to do it. I really, I think it's great because anytime a person, because just in empowering yourself to go through, like the program that you have, just that gives you, helps boost your confidence, and it helps sort of solidify that, yeah, I can do this. And just by saying that's kind of what I always said to myself. I can do this. I can get through this. Even in my darkest times, I in my darkest moments in my life, I thought, no, I can do this. I can do it. And so after a while, you start to believe yourself, And so when you're empowering yourself, you're going to, it does help you out, I think. Build your confidence a little bit.
I think that's definitely true, and especially because you know from your own experience, and I know from mine, healing is not a straight path. So it's not like you say, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this, and it's going to go fabulously, and then I'm going to be healed.
Exactly.
Because it never goes that way. You try something, and it succeeds, and you go on to the next thing, and you totally fail. And you go into a deep, dark depression and say, oh, my God, this is never going to work. And the fact of the matter is that we have to be comfortable with exactly what you're saying. We try different things. I mean, in my healing, I was in psychotherapy for 8 years before I even got a diagnosis because even my psychiatrist had never heard of PTSD. He was a therapist, I should say, a psychologist. And he didn't recognize it. So I had to go outside of him to find some, I wasn't getting better. After 8 years, I was getting worse because what did we do? We talked and talked and talked about my trauma. And all I ended up doing was triggering over and over and over. And then life events happened that triggered me so that my own trauma was a medical mistake. And as my life went on, every time a medical mistake occurred, which unfortunately happened to me more than once, and it didn't replicate my original trauma, which was a life-threatening illness. But any medical mistake just triggered me so that I went, in my own head into a crazy panic.
Right.
So we talked and talked and talked about that, but we didn't ever get get to a place where I could resolve it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went in when I wasn't getting better. We started using EMDR and emotional freedom technique and thought field therapy and all these different alternative things, which I have to say did bring me some relief, but they didn't eradicate my symptoms. And so you're right. Try stuff. You make a little progress, then you have to figure out, what am I going to try now? Because I know the combination is out there. I just have to figure out what it is.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's a whole page on the Heal My PTSD website that gives an overview of all the popular treatment options. So there are so many, from talk therapy to cognitive behavior therapy to exposure therapy to the information processing therapies like EMDR to neurolinguistic programming to hypnosis. There's a whole range of elements. And sometimes, for some people, just one thing will put them over the edge and they'll be free. And for others, like myself, you have to try a myriad of things before you get to where you need to be. And sometimes the whole process is cumulative. So I really believe everything I did had a healing effect. And when you put them all together, it brought me this ultimate freedom.
Right.
And so going into recovery, we just have to understand that there is a certain amount of trial and error that goes on, and that's why your point that you made earlier about how important becoming self-empowered is, that's so incredibly important because the road to recovery is so difficult. And the more empowered we are in the process and the more powerful we feel about ourselves and the more in control we feel, the more progress we can make. And it's not actually that difficult to achieve. This sense of empowerment, the healing workshop that I ran on the blog all last year, which is now archived on the blog as the Bridge the Gap Healing Workshop, it's really an entire year's worth of personal evolution that goes from creating the intention to heal all the way through educating yourself, educating the people around you, learning to talk about trauma, learning to reach out, all the way through deliberately constructing a post-trauma identity, and at the to the very end of the year, how to stay on the healing path. Since it's not necessarily the same length for any of us, we all have to know how to keep it going and how to keep moving forward. So on this healing workshop, every month was a different aspect of becoming more empowered in a different area of your recovery. And when you put all of that together, you become a stronger survivor.
Right.
And that is enormously helpful in the recovery process.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's just amazing. I'm definitely going to check that out. And that is so good. I like how you mentioned the intent, with the intention to heal. The first steps, right? Just saying, I'm making a commitment to make the intention to heal. And I think that's empowering in itself, is just taking that step. And
I think you're so right, because for a long time I went from doctor to doctor and I said, heal me, cure me, do something. And when I finally started saying, I want to be healed, show me what I can do, that was a very big shift for me. To take responsibility for my healing was enormous. And yet when I did that, it increased the power I had. And when you make that little shift from expecting everyone to do it for you, which they cannot and will not do,
that's right,
to knowing that you have to do it yourself and committing to the intention to do it, right there, it's like taking a giant leap forward in your healing, because it changes your whole perspective.
Absolutely. And I know that's kind of what I experienced. I know just in my own life, I thought I'm the only one that's going to be able to do this. I'm going to, because I wanted to have a good life. And I thought, well, how am I going to have a good life? And I thought, well, I'm going to have to do it. No one can do it for me. So I guess I'm going to have to do it. And I started to realize that it was going to have to be me to actually make it happen. And that was the very first steps for my life to change and start moving in a positive direction. Before that, I was just going along in a bit of a nightmare. And so that probably is what started the whole thing, is just saying, I want a better life. How am I going to do it? Oh, it's going to have to be me to do it. So yeah, I think that's so important. Absolutely. And
that's
I try
great.
to.
It's awesome that you figured that out.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and I think I was very blessed really, because so it's sad, but it's very sad when you hear stories of people who haven't been able to do that, and that's why I'm very I try to be really proactive and say reach out, just keep reaching out and keep looking around for resources and information that can really help you, because we're all different and we all heal differently. We all need different things, and our situations are different. So what works for me might not work for you, sort of thing, or what works for you might not work for me. But parts of it might, and that's why if you're at least looking around and seeing what's out there, it does open the window. It opens up the door, and you start thinking, hey, this looks like something I could be interested in, and before you know it, you're starting to feel some sense of a bit of a positive, change in the whole thing.
Hope. Start to feel hope. And
That's
on
right.
top of that, I think you're right. We're all individual in our traumas. I think we're all universal in our PTSD experience.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I started writing about my PTSD experience, I was shocked that a combat vet could understand and relate to what I was saying, and yet I get a lot of email from vets saying that's exactly how I would express it. That's exactly how I would say it. And
interesting.
What it really started to teach me when child abuse survivors and incest survivors and domestic violence survivors, they all related to what I was talking about, and I always felt so isolated in my PTSD. I had this freak medical thing happen to me that almost killed me, and who could relate to this very rare thing?
Mm-hmm.
And yet in our PTSD, we all relate because our
right.
individual traumas are separate, but we're unified in our PTSD experience. And then I think beyond that, we go off on our, like you've already said, we go off on our own individual healing journeys. But then I think there's also one thing that is universal to all of us. While our healing journeys are all different, we all inherently have the potential to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just a matter of figuring out how to tap that potential.
Right. Right, and just by just delving into it, and like you did, just saying you went on a healing rampage,
Yeah.
So I just love that, it's like I'm doing this. This is happening. I'm gonna heal.
Yeah.
That's just awesome. That is just so awesome. Well, and I'm so glad that you could be on the show. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We got about just a couple minutes left, and is there anything that you just think the listener would really benefit from hearing tonight? And
I think that everyone should walk away from this call knowing a couple of things. Knowing, number one, that if you have people around you who tell you it's not possible to heal PTSD, get new people around you, because that's not true. Because there are people walking all over the earth who have overcome it. So we're all walking proof that it is possible. That would be the first thing. And the second thing I think is important to recognize that it will and must be done by you. So it's time to stand up and decide, I am going to do this, and then do what needs to be done to tap your healing potential, because every single one of us has that. Our bodies are built to heal. They already do that. If you cut your finger, you already automatically heal. Your brain is designed. Neuroplasticity is an enormous new field, and it is proving that our brains are designed to heal and to change, which means even the neurological problems or changes that come with PTSD can be changed again.
Right,
so
we're seeing more and more of that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the number one thing to walk away with is the idea that you have this potential to heal. What are you going to do with it?
Right, and that is a good question. Wow.
And for any questions that anybody has, I can always be accessed. I'm always on the blog and on the site at www.healmyptsd.com. There's a great community over there working through the workshop, which is archived now and totally, completely free. And
that's awesome.
and I'm always building resources. So if you or anyone else wants to contribute a link or a book or a class or anything, feel free to get in touch with me and contribute. The site is ever evolving.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you,
I
Lori,
appreciate
for what you're
you.
doing.
It's so nice to talk to you.
It's good to have each other.
It is. It's so true. And you have a Blog Talk Radio program too, and I tune into that and try to catch it when I can. And,
thank you. We have a show next week with a combat vet talking about how hobbies can actually help the healing process. And
Well,
he's a really interesting guy. He's a magician, so
yeah.
he's got
I'll
a
be
neat take on this.
I'll be listening to that one. Even if I have to catch it on archive, I'm going to make sure I listen to that. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. It was just
thank
wonderful
you, Lori.
having you.
Have a great night.
You too. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And remember to go and check our website out. Great information.